It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Chris Gordy here from Locked On SEC, and this episode is brought to you by the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier. In the all-new Frontier, the adventure begins where the road ends. So get out there and find your Frontier. The all-new Frontier has 310 horsepower, standard for when the trail gets tough. Shop NissanUSA.com today to see more features the Frontier is loaded with, from premium interior and a 9-inch touchscreen and zero-gravity front seats. Find your Frontier today in the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier. Shop NissanUSA.com. What's happening, everybody? On today's show, our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, he caught up with Cole Kublik from Jocks FM and the SEC Network, talking a number of topics from around the SEC. We'll let you hear what Cole had to say, and we will go around the conference as Kirby Smart gives an update on his quarterback, an update from Tennessee, Florida, Mizzou, and much, much more. Locked On SEC starts now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and LockedOnSEC.com. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over in Athens as the Georgia receiving corps has been decimated with injuries this year. And that's before you even consider that George Pickens suffered ACL during the spring. But has been some good news on the horizon, and there could be some good news with quarterback JT Daniels. After practice on Tuesday, Coach Kirby Smart said that wide receivers Marcus Rosemead, Jack Saint, Arian Smith, and Dom Blaylock could all play on Saturday. He also added that JT Daniels threw the ball on Tuesday, not very hard or very much. But Smart did say he doesn't remember ever having such a long injury sheet. So amazing to see what the Georgia Bulldogs have done, particularly with their defense. But man, if that offense can get healthy and they get everybody on their same page, look out. Also of note, Kirby did reveal that quarterback Stetson Bennett has a knee laceration, but it has not and is not bothering him. Bennett has thrown for over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns on the season, filling in for JT Daniels. Georgia will play at number 18 Auburn this Saturday in Jordan-Hare Stadium, 3:30 Eastern kickoff on CBS. Something to keep an eye on there with Stetson Bennett if he goes and not JT Daniels. There was a lot of hype this past weekend between Georgia and Arkansas. The number 2 Bulldogs hosted the Razorbacks, and ESPN's College Game Day was in Athens. The Game Day broadcast delivered huge numbers. According to ESPN, their Game Day drew 2.15 million viewers, marking its most watched October broadcast since the show expanded to 3 hours back in 2013. There were also 3 million viewers tuned in during the final hour, making it the most watched last hour of the show since November 2018. So there were a lot of eyes on that game. The game did not live up to the hype, especially if you were an Arkansas fan. Over at Mizzou, they are 2-3 through the first 5 weeks of the season. Things have not gone especially well. Eli Drinkwitz talking with the media this week ahead of their matchup against North Texas. He said, quote, "There is no depth chart." He said there's Tuesday's practice. After Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll have a better feel for who we think is going to play, but there is no depth chart. Normally you would have a depth chart, but Eli Drinkwitz basically saying open competition everywhere. He said it's kind of like a fall camp again. Whoever plays and practices the best is going to be the ones who play on Saturday. Over in South Carolina, head coach Shane Beamer talking with the media about his running back Kevin Harris. The junior, he says, is making a lot of progress towards getting back to the player he was last year. And he said he feels like a breakout game for Harris is coming. Looking for the offensive line to get better and Harris to continue to feel better. So far this season, Harris has rushed for just 140 rushing yards on the ground. Compare that to last year when he was second to only Najee Harris with 1,100 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns. He's nowhere near what he was a year ago, but again, dealing with the off-season injury and trying to come back from that. Over at Florida, they obviously just lost to Kentucky and Lexington for the first time since 1986. And some Gator fans doubting Dan Mullen and the Gators, but one man not giving up, quarterback Emory Jones. Speaking with the media this week, he said it is not the end of the world. We still have a lot to play for. Florida's next 3 games, including a home game against Vandy, should be a win, but then a road game in Death Valley against LSU and a road trip to Jacksonville to face Georgia. So could be some more losses on the docket for Florida. Emory Jones having faith in his team. Over at LSU, Coach O off to a rough start, 2 losses already this season, and Pete Thamel at Yahoo Sports is already looking ahead to the possibility of Coach O being fired. And who would LSU go after? In an article he posted about LSU Athletic Director Scott Woodward, he said he's always been a star chaser, and he said he will likely look for some high-profile names if the situation presents itself. He said the list will be short, as there aren't many coaches who have the credentials, personality, and coaching chops to handle LSU. He said expect Woodward to go after the likes of Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, Penn State's James Franklin, or Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. The prevailing thought in former assistant Joe Brady, who is now in the NFL, is that he will continue his life in the NFL. Over in Knoxville, Tennessee offensive coordinator Alex Golesh talking with the media this week. Many topics discussed, including the rise of quarterback Hendon Hooker, who was officially announced as the starting quarterback ahead of Joe Milton. Golesh said it was hard to tell during fall camp because of the red non-contact jersey, but Hendon Hooker is, quote, a certified dude in terms of toughness. He said his teammates see that and that it sparks the rest of the team. Talking with Peter Burns on the SEC Network this week. Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops, talking about his team, said, why can it not be us? We can play with anybody, but we can't get ahead of ourselves either. We have the opportunity every 7 days to be humbled. Stoops continued to say that his team needs to continue to do the things that they have done to get where they want to go. They host LSU this weekend. And over at Texas A&M at his Monday press conference, Jimbo Fisher talking about how the Aggies need to close the gap between them and the top-ranked Crimson Tide. He said, I think we got to continue to recruit well. We got to continue to coach well. We got to understand to build the fundamental culture of what we want to do. And even though the Aggies have lost to Arkansas and Mississippi State, Jimbo still confident in his plan to try to beat the Tide in the SEC West. He said, hopefully we'll be able to continue to close that gap, but they're obviously doing a great job. And there you have it. That is around the conference. When we return, going to hear some thoughts from Cole Kublik, what he has to say about the SEC landscape thus far. Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Need to remind you guys about our friends over at BetOnline. They are back and better than ever. All eyes on the gridiron as we're into the thick of it, from college football to the NFL, and obviously here, all eyes on the SEC. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all things pro and college football this season. With a new updated website and interface, they got even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continuing to be the number one source for everything football. And of course, as we tell you all the time, if you've never signed up with them before, go over there right now on their website. You can even do so on your mobile device. Sign up today and you get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use our promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON. Use that. You'll receive your bonus. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Before the action this weekend, make sure you take the minute to get in on their action at betonline.ag. BetOnline, they are where the game starts.
David Harrison here, the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast, celebrating with you a 21-grain salute to a less boring sandwich thanks to Dave's Killer Bread. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat pizza, I eat it for the toppings, not the crust. And when I eat a sandwich, it's for what's inside the bread, not for the bread. But when I throw a sandwich on 21 whole grains and seeds, thin sliced bread from Dave's Killer Bread, it is the epitome of addition by subtraction. That thin sliced bread lets me focus on what's inside the sandwich, but also adds to the sandwich with killer taste, killer texture, killer nutrition, a subtle sweetness, and a seed-coated crust. Dave's Killer Bread is America's #1 organic bread for a reason. It tastes so stinking good. Dave's Killer Bread is made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients and is power-packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
Going along here, Locked On SEC. And Mentioned earlier, our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, also hosts a radio show on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge, and one of his weekly guests, he catches up with Cole Kublik from the SEC Network, ESPN, Jocks FM, and always talking all things SEC, and we love to let you guys hear a little bit of what they have to say. I think Cole is one of the best in the business, tremendous insight. So here's a little bit of that conversation between Cole and Matt, and we start with Cole being asked by Matt, what went so wrong for LSU Saturday night in their loss to the Auburn Tigers? Here was Cole.
Well, I think the first thing that sticks out to me, Matt, is just the inability to find balance. And, I mean, it's a recurring theme. It's why I did a segment for SEC Nation with Olivia Dunn in the gymnastics facility, because I was on the balance beam talking about the team becoming more balanced.
Right.
And it hasn't happened. And I understand wanting to go fast, wanting to be explosive, wanting to challenge down the field, wanting to be aggressive. That's all great, but you have to be able to find some balance at certain times. I mean, listen, unless you're going to do it the way that Mississippi State does, and I mean, they put on an absolute clinic at how to play ball control offense, not running the ball. But basically, what people don't understand about that air raid is some of the outlet passes, some of the quick throws, that is running the ball. It's just the quarterback doesn't hand it off. He has a very high percentage throw that he usually completes and knows it's going to be easy to complete. But you brought up game situations and situational football where you do need to run the ball sometimes, and that does need to be something that you can accomplish. So I personally thought there were run looks that I felt like if they would have wanted to and decided to and committed to it, could have found success running the ball. Now, obviously they did. And we got a lot of balls down the field still. Some of those either just inaccurate or into coverage that wasn't necessarily going to give you the best chance to be successful. And then I think you kind of also got away from force-feeding the football to your best football player in Keyshawn Boutte, which he was great early. What, do you have 99 yards on the first drive?
Yep.
Which, because of penalties, I think that was feasible for him to do. So, he's that good. He's got to be a big part of the game plan. And whether you motion him, whether you throw it to him quickly, short passes, deep passes, finding matchups for him, whatever it is, he's got to continue to be a part of the plan, especially if you're not going to say, okay, we've got this 2-score, double-digit lead, whatever it is. We're going to try and run clock. We're going to try to get out of here to win. He still has to be a part, because if you're not going to play that style of football, then you're essentially saying, we think we can keep scoring. And he is such a good player that if you're going to try to keep scoring, he's got to be a part of your plan.
A little bit more from Cole Kublik, talking all things SEC. Matt Moscona asking Cole, what does the win on Saturday mean for the Auburn Tigers?
It's a really nice win. First and foremost, seriously, though, to get that streak out of the way and put that behind the program is big. There's something that the players are not going to have to hear about. They're not going to have to listen to that be referenced. And so I think that's, as a program, that's a big hurdle. And so Brian Harsin was able to do something that the previous head coach couldn't do, previous two head coaches couldn't do. So, I think that in and of itself is big, just for not only Brian Harsin, Bo Nix, but just the program in general. And then I think, too, some of the things that Bo Nix did are not sustainable. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince anybody and pretend that they are, because they're just not. However, I really did like the game plan from Mike Bobo. I thought that he basically went out and said, all right, if what our quarterback does best is run around, let's give him some of those things to help him be successful. And they were able to find that. And that's moving the pocket a little bit. You saw some of the bootlegs. You saw some of the quarterback reads. Now, the Johnny Manziel stuff where he's changing directions 3 or 4 times in one play, that's not necessarily drawn up. But there are a lot of other things that were drawn up to allow him to be successful doing that. So I think that is, and you and I talked about it last week. I said his mobility has to be something that you put in, that you build around. Because it's probably, let's be honest, it's probably the best aspect of his game. That and maybe toughness. So continue to work around that, continue to find ways to build with that. And then, too, I thought the way that they formationed LSU was really good. Some of the misdirection runs, really good. I mean, they gave you 2-3 runs we haven't seen this year. So it was almost a little – the plan was a little Chip Kelly-like. And I bet if you gave Bobo some truth serum and sat down with him and said, how much did you study that UCLA film to decide what you wanted to implement, it would have been a pretty big part of it. Not that he took exact plays, but that he took a lot of things that worked for them and made them their own and sort of married it up to what they have and then went out and found ways to be successful. There are still holes, there's still problems. They got to find a way to get Tank going. He's just too damn good to not be a bigger part. Not that Jarquez, there's nothing wrong with him, and Shivers can be a nice little change guy, but Tank Bigsby is just too good to not be a big part of what you're doing on a regular basis. And then, you know, defensively, I think Derek Mason found a little bit of juice off the edge in Romello Height. I think he's a guy that can help you pass rush. And you just got to keep working around that defensive line. They're moving Colby Wooten around. I think that helps. He's our most active defensive lineman, both inside and outside. Try to find ways to get him singled up where he can help you out. But it's going to be kind of a patchwork deal for Auburn, Matt. Like, it's going to depend. Like, this is a bad matchup this week, which there are not many good matchups for a team playing Georgia.
Right.
But there's just, you know, they're going to have to find the little ways that they can be successful. They're going to have to try to exploit them, and then they're going to have to try to play clean football. And then maybe a guy, Bo Nix, bails them out, or, you know, you get, like you got against Georgia State, a special team score. That's just kind of what this team's going to have to be this year.
Next up, Matt asked Cole about Kentucky. So they had a tough, emotional win last week over Florida. Any chance they could maybe be in a letdown spot this week facing LSU?
It's easy to say that, and especially for them because they are a program that I feel like the last 4 or 5 years, and trust me, I think I've had them more than any other broadcast crew in the history of television.
There's no doubt.
Last 5 or 6 years. That they do play down to the level of their opponents at times. Look no further than Tennessee Chattanooga this year. They had to score late to win that game. But we saw it against Southern Miss a couple of years ago. We saw it against Eastern Kentucky a couple of years ago. Like they seem to have certain games where it's like, this is not the team that I've seen. This is not the team that played this team or that team and looked great. That being said, that's a different one, man. That's Florida at home, a team that, you know, I was in the Swamp a couple of years ago when they ended that streak. And so I know what that game means because I've also been in Lexington for 2 that have been very close very recently. So there's just a lot to that one. And I think they all know what that is and why it's so important. So I don't know if I don't anticipate that there will be a letdown, mainly because this is an opponent in a game that they don't get at home very often. And I don't really care if LSU is undefeated or, you know, 5 games below 500. It's freaking LSU. So you're going to be pumped up for that game. The place is going to be bonkers. And now you have some things in front of you that are just very different than maybe what you were even talking about before the season began. So, yes, it's possible. I wouldn't say that there's no way we don't get that. But I also think that they've already had that once this year. And so maybe that taught you a lesson as to how to sort of move on from it.
Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Coming up next, we'll hear a little bit more from Cole Kubelik. Need to remind you guys about our friends at Prize Picks. If you are a college football fanatic, chances are you probably heard about Prize Picks, but if you haven't signed up there yet, you are making a big mistake. Go check them out. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you guys will as well. They are the leader in college football or college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world. They offer any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. And, of course, all of our great users that go over there and deposit, use our promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKED. You will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, just be sure to use promo code LOCKEDON. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projection. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Go use their award-winning app. You can find it on the App Store or Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON or go to your App Store and download the app today. Prize Picks his daily fantasy made easy. Always a good time to tell you about our friends at Built Bar as well. Built Bar still the best tasting protein bar ever. Of course, they had the limited time flavor, the cookie dough chunk, but 9 delicious flavors that they always have, from the coconut to the cherry to coconut almond, raspberry, the mint brownie, my favorite, double chocolate, salted caramel. There is something for everybody. And if you don't have a favorite Built Bar flavor yet, what are you waiting for? Go to their website right now, builtbar.com. If you haven't tried all the flavors yet, you can get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of their 9 flavors, but many of the flavors packed with 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs. Great for a post-workout or post-run treat, but also good for you. Go over there to their website right now. Order today. You can get the raspberry and the mint brownie or whatever you like. When you go to BuiltBar.com, make sure you use our promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15. You will get 15% off your first order if you've never ordered from them before. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off over at BuiltBar.com. No better time to order than today. Plenty of reasons to pack your face with stuff that's not good for you coming up with Halloween candy and Thanksgiving and Christmas. Make some better life decisions right now with Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com right now. Run along here, Locked On SEC, and again, great conversation. Our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, also host on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge, has a weekly visit with Cole Kublik from Jocks FM, talking all things SEC football. Of course, Cole, part of the SEC Network crew on Saturday nights, does a fantastic job on the sidelines there, and thought we'd let you hear a little bit more of that conversation between Cole and Matt. And next up, Cole asked by Matt, these next few games for teams like Kentucky and really other teams throughout the month of October could really make or break the season. But it feels like that for a handful of teams. Here was Cole Kublik talking about that.
It's almost every team in the league. Like, October is literally the steel cage match for the entire SEC. Like, go look at Ole Miss's October. Go look at A&M's October. I think Kentucky has probably worse, but I mean, look at LSU's October. Mm-hmm. Holy hell, man! Yeah. It's like everybody's October outside of me. Look at Arkansas.
Yeah,
and,
Arkansas.
Hell, Auburn's October is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just, this is literally the Hell in a Cell match for this month for every SEC team almost. It's great for us because we get awesome games to talk about.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have like nonstop great competitive football games, but it is going to be a brutal 3 to 5 week stretch for a lot of teams.
A little bit more on that subject. Cole asked, Kentucky's schedule does lighten up as the season winds down, so could it be a one-game season with them in Georgia, perhaps?
We do lighten up late, You're right. And that's why, and again, I would just ask you to go back and look at the SEC East graphic that I tweeted out at Media Days and find all those Florida responses to that, because those are hilarious right now.
Okay,
as I check the SEC
now.
East standings. But as it pertains to that, that's another thing. You get, kind of like what you pointed out, you get this one this weekend. Florida still's got to go play LSU and Georgia. So even if the rest of the East looks like it's lighting up a little bit, and then, all of a sudden Tennessee looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
They just almost put 700 on Missouri.
That was crazy.
So all of a sudden they don't look like the same team. So if you get this one, and this is not even so much that it's because it's LSU, it's just like what you said. You get this one, you got a 2-game lead in the division over Florida, and you have to play Mississippi State. And then you should be able to handle Tennessee. Like, Tennessee's not going to do that to Kentucky's defense. I don't care what year, where, when, how, why. Not when Stoops and Brad White are there. They're not doing that. So you got a great shot to get Tennessee, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. You're going to get those teams, or they already got South Carolina, but you're going to get Vanderbilt. All of a sudden it's like things really lighten up, and Louisville looks very gettable from a non-conference perspective. But, yeah, from the league's perspective, if you get this one, like I think they've essentially locked up second place in the East.
That's crazy.
Which is freaking incredible to think about from what Mark Stoops has been doing.
One more from Cole Kublik's conversation with our buddy Matt Moscona on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. He asked Cole about the Texas A&M Aggies losing to Mississippi State. Asked Cole, was that a bigger win for the Bulldogs or a bigger loss for the Aggies?
I think it was a bigger win for State because I think when people calm down and look at what's happening with this A&M football team right now, you're going to realize, okay, we lost our starting quarterback. We lost our starting center. We've played, I think, now 13 different offensive line combinations over the course of not even half of a season. And, we've played a couple tough opponents. So, because obviously Arkansas, even before they beat A&M, I think even now we view them a little bit differently before they played A&M. Like, that's a pretty good football team. And then I think that we're just going to look back on this and say there was too much going on, and we never should have thought it was going to be that. With State, I think they're really close. I think they're really close in a lot of areas. And that's why I said last week that I thought they were kind of the weirdest team in college football, but I also thought that weirdness made them a little bit closer to being good instead of weird. Their defense just flies around. They get things done. You and I talked about this. They outgained LSU by what, 140-something yards?
Yeah.
They go 13 of 15 on third down against LSU. They lose the game. Well, they held Memphis of 2 of 13 on third down and under 90 yards rushing, and they lose the game. But Will Rogers looks so comfortable. He looks so confident and so comfortable running that offense. That's the way it's supposed to look. And now the offensive line's coming around. Listen, they got Michael Clemens, DeMarvin Leal, Jaden Beebe. Those 3 guys are going to be on NFL rosters. They couldn't get to Will Rogers, man. They couldn't get there. And the defense is going to give up some big plays occasionally because of their style, but also they're aggressive enough to be problematic no matter who they play. So I just think that they're starting to find their way. I think they're a team that's going to be super dangerous because, again, Will Rogers has found the confidence and the calm to sit back and basically say, all right, we'll play ball control. And I'll just dink and dunk you to death. And how are you going to feel when you get half the possessions that you thought you were going to have? And all of a sudden they make you a different football team when they can do that. So it's I think it was bigger for State because I look at them now as I have very different expectations for them as opposed to what I did, 2-3 weeks ago.
That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, my thanks to Matt Moscona and Cole Kublik for letting us share some of that conversation with you guys. And thank you to you all for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Now go ahead and make your second listen. You can check out our buddy Matt Moscona with Locked On LSU. You can listen to Locked On Vols with Eric Kane or any of our other great podcasts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It is free and available on all platforms. I'm Chris Gordy. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC. Start getting into previewing some of the games happening this weekend. Some big ones will be hitting the road, heading up to Lexington. We'll talk about it all tomorrow on Locked On SEC.